I'll start first by sharing some ideas with you around who the EDP is and what it is we do. As Africa pointed out, we are an independent, not-for-profit, public benefit organization. We've been around since 2012. We identify as a collaborative intermediary in being able to support diverse stakeholders to be able to harness each other's energy, their knowledge, their resources for collective impact. As the EDP, we specialize in convening processes that address complex systemic problems, particularly in low-trust, low-certainty environments, in order to be able to contribute to systems change that brings about inclusive and sustainable socioeconomic development. We strongly, and I hope that this comes through in this presentation and this input, is that relationships matter. We work to strengthen relationships between government departments, amongst them, across different spheres of government, across national, provincial, local, but also with civil society, business, and academia. And we're uniquely known to be able to help to connect what we call the top-down authorizing environment, the world of government, regulation, finance, and so on, with the bottom-up mobilizing environment of citizens, communities, civil society, entrepreneurs, small businesses, and so on, those that are regulated within the broader environment. And we hope to connect this top-down and bottom-up mobilizing environment to be able to result in collective impact. In engaging with complexity, we found David Snowden's Cynefin framework very helpful, especially in being able to distinguish between complex issues and complicated issues. Simple issues, as you will well know, are like baking a cake. If you have the right ingredients and you have the right recipe, anyone can do it. But complicated issues are like designing a water treatment works or landing a rocket on the moon. Through analysis, investigation, expert knowledge, you can follow good practice in doing this. However, complex issues, like the development challenges that we face on an ongoing basis, really require us to engage with a myriad actors and lots of unknowns. The relationship between cause and effect in this scenario is often only perceived in retrospect. And often there's no best practice. We don't have a given recipe to be able to follow. There's no best practice, but only emergent practice in dealing with complex problems. So working with complexity is often experimental. And we can't really benefit from fail-safe, linear processes with known solutions. Responding to complexity requires us to be able to focus very much on how it is that we work and with whom we work, rather than just what we do. And we've got to be able to think about how it is we work and who it is we work with. So if we understand governance as the framework of actors within a system being organized in a particular way, how then do we nurture the system of relationships in a way that leverages change? This makes the case for collaborative governance and for system stewardship. I know many of you are here in this 2 days engaging a lot with how we leverage better technology, how we leverage better data. I think that the smart agenda also needs to be thinking about how we leverage relationships, particularly relationships that are needed for systems change. And that the idea of being a smart utility or a smart city is as much about leveraging data and technology as it is about leveraging the relationships to solve difficult developmental problems. And I hope that if you get one of the messages that I'm trying to land today, it's that. So one such system is water. So I'm sure that you're all here, you do what you do, and you're all here today because you recognize that our social, environmental, and economic well-being really depends on water. Building water resilience is about building the ability of our systems and institutions to be able to respond to change, to be able to recover from disruption, to be able to provide the essential services for all. Water resilience is a complex and shared challenge because multiple actors hold mandates, they hold the responsibilities, they hold the influence to be able to make the system work. No single actor in the system can actually claim that they can achieve water resilience by themselves. It requires behavior change, not just amongst city government and utilities, but amongst a range of private and public actors, intergovernmentally, national government, provincial government, and so on, and among citizens and businesses. So this behavior change is needed across the system, which is why we need a collaborative governance approach, one that's built on shared vision, on common agenda, and on mutual accountability. So we'll look at some of the examples of collaborative governance, and mostly centered around some of the work that we've been doing with the City of Cape Town over the last few years. Many of you have heard earlier today about Day Zero and the drought and 2018 and the prospect of the city running out of water. During this time, there were active calls for citizens and active citizenship from citizens and other sectors that were needed in this period. Civil society was needed for better coordination, sharing of information, monitoring of the situation, in a context where there were conflicting and confusing messages that needed to be able to be rationalized and to be able to ensure that there was a proper evidence-based basis for that information. And there were complaints that there was not enough engagement with citizens. So there was a need to focus communication on behavior that would support behavior change and not just panic. In this context, amongst the many things that were going on in the response to the drought, the EDP was asked to convene a citizen-centric engagement platform that met regularly during the drought and mobilized a network of actors to be able to ensure that there was accurate information shared, consistent messaging, and the incremental building of mutual accountability and trust. And this was before I was there at the time of my predecessor in being able to ensure that the role that the EDP was able to contribute to this. This work contributed to the city's ability to be able to rapidly gear up relationships and engagements with businesses, with community structures, and with NGOs. And even the city's IDP was amended to be able to articulate this idea that building of resilience needed to rely on relationships and partnering. So flowing from the drought, and in the years that since then, the city needed to, together with its partners, focus on the resilience of the Western Cape water supply system. The Western Cape water supply system is a multi-dam, multi-user, multi-authority system. It supplies water to various municipalities, to agriculture, to business, tourism, industry, and the environment. And as you all well know, climate variability and long-term water stress can increase uncertainty and the need for trade-offs within the system. And here is a clear example of water governance being challenged, largely because no single institution owns the whole system. Decisions are interdependent and they're politically sensitive. They're fragmented mandates and they're uneven information flows. And there's a tendency towards reactive engagement during crises rather than shared stewardship during these crises. There's also a limited shared understanding of what exactly the constraints are on the system and what are the risks. So over the last 4 years, the EDP has been able to convene an informal, multi-stakeholder water user platform. It meets quarterly and it focuses on joint problem solving. It's created a safe space and a neutral space for dialogue between national government, Department of Water and Sanitation, provincial government, agriculture, and most importantly, the municipalities within the region, who speak on behalf of urban users. It's been able to strengthen transparency, particularly around what the status of the system currently is and what are the decision-making processes that are required. And it's incrementally been able to build relationships and, over time, mutual accountability and trust. So this form of cooperative and collaborative governance has been able to contribute to resilience through improved trust and communication across institutions. It's enabled the early identification of emerging risks, like certain canals being blocked that have a flooding threat. It's supported more coherent systems-wide thinking rather than siloed decisions, where role players are starting to talk about innovative concepts like water banking and so on within the system. And it's shifted the culture from crisis coordination to an ongoing governance strengthening. Another example that I'm wanting to talk about is catchment management forums. So these are local mechanisms for manifesting integrated water resource management. And in Cape Town, they bring together the city officials, and they bring together civil society, landowners, community groups, and local stakeholders. These CMFs, these forums, sit at the interface between officials and citizens. But without a clear purpose, they run the risk of being performative and not being transformative. So the work that we've been doing with the city has been able to help to develop guidelines for the rollout of catchment management forums as a governance response, in helping to work with city officials in clarifying the purpose and intent of them as collaborative governance platforms. We've co-convened a co-development process of developing the guidelines for these things, and together with officials and civil society, have been able to jointly define roles, expectations, and value. This has really positioned these catchment management forums as vehicles for shared visioning, for local action planning at catchment scale. There are now 11 operational catchment management forums that contribute to resilience. And this has helped to bring communities closer to officials in very structured, constructive ways, strengthening local capacity to tackle water challenges. It's also laid the groundwork for forums that can evolve from mere consultation to collaboration. And it's supported integrated water resource management at a local level through shared understanding and through joint action. It's also been able to build social and institutional foundations for long-term urban resilience. In the final example that I'll talk about is about supporting community partnerships. So we've worked with the City of Cape Town in helping to produce the City of Cape Town Community Partnering Framework for water and sanitation. And this identifies the importance of structured, intentional partnerships with community actors for more strategic responses to shared challenges. This framework kind of recognizes that for the city to be able to achieve its vision of a water-resilient city for all depends not only on the infrastructure and on the capacity of officials and so on, but on active citizen participation and co-production. So in this, the city utilizes, firstly, it's trying to respond to a set of challenges around that are really about the fact that community organizations are best placed and often closest to risk and vulnerability. The community organizations are able to respond to local service and climate challenges in an agile and place-based way. And often engagement with these structures is informal, fragmented, and under-resourced. And there's been very little experimentation in the way that cities around the country work with these kinds of forums and community-based organizations in being able to achieve common objectives. So the city's been utilizing a grant system to be able to support community-based organizations through the piloting of this community partnering framework. It's a way to invest small seed funding in place-based organizations. And it goes beyond funding by being able to provide capacity building and accompaniment. It's provided a safe space for reflection and structured learning. It's able to provide work experience in engaging formal systems. And it's been able to provide media and showcase opportunities that grow the legitimacy and visibility of these projects. So this is not simply a grant given out to community organizations, but really a prototype, a proof of concept for how strategic partnering with communities can take place. And it's contributed to resilience by being able to not treat community organizations as just beneficiaries, but as governance actors. And these small catalytic investments have really been able to unlock resilience and innovation. The structured support that's provided has been able to increase the sustainability and growth of these place-based organizations. And the co-production that we've seen in this process strengthens both local resilience and institutional responsiveness. So these are all examples of how collaborative governance can play itself out in the water resilience setting. So the question is, what does this all mean for these capabilities for contagious collaboration? We've spent some time thinking about what these capabilities are. And we've kind of settled on 5 capabilities being quite central to this contagious collaboration. The first we call collective sense-making. This is how different actors can be convened and enabled through dialogue, through evidence, through understanding the lived experiences of others, to see how the system works, and to be able to understand their relative role in the systemic problems that exist, as well as the change that's required, with the intention of finding agreement on one common goal. And it's really quite important that utilities and municipalities and so on are able to engage in an idea of collective sense-making and dialogue with even their biggest detractors. You shouldn't only be talking to your friends. You should be talking to your biggest critics as well in the environment that you're working with. The idea is not to be able to agree on everything, but to find at least one area of common agreement. And it takes just one area of common agreement to be able to start to build a collaboration on. And collaboration starts there with just one agreement on a common goal. The second capability is that of collaborative planning and resourcing. So with agreement on one common goal, what kind of multi-stakeholder actions are required to achieve this? These could be joint actions, these could be complementary actions, and they need to make their way into the implementation plans of the different organizations that exist. These actions will require commitment of resources and hopefully over time a blending of resources to be able to show that collaboration is more efficient than not collaborating. The third capability is co-implementation, being able to implement together. We need the capabilities for multi-stakeholder implementation that focuses on how we work together. This requires new ways of working, transversally, jointly unblocking problems and communicating as we do it. The fourth capability is mutual accountability. Collaborative implementation will fail if there are not capabilities built for mutually and meaningfully holding each other to account in a partnership, in an evidence-based and transparent way. It's the most important way to be able to build trust. The fifth capability that lies at the center of all of this is shared learning and innovation. We must be able to build ways to be able to try out new ways of working, to be able to allow ourselves to fail, to be able to learn from these, to be able to evaluate our collaborations and our partnerships and find ways of improving them, and knowing when a collaboration has failed as well. So these are some of the capabilities that we think that are core to being able to get partnerships going, and it requires a culture change amongst us to be able to embrace partnering and collaboration as an ongoing mechanism in the work that we do. So to conclude, I'd like to make 4 points. One is that we know that smart cities require the leveraging of technology and the leveraging of data. But more is required to be smart. The complexity of the developmental goals that we have to address and to achieve are really about also including in that recipe for smartness how we work with others. It's about leveraging relationships as much as leveraging data and leveraging technology. So this is, for me, quite an important part of that ingredient of what makes a utility or a city smart. And water utilities need to be able to build the capabilities to be able to do this collaborative governance. And it doesn't come easily. All of us in all of our training, wherever we went to school to be engineers or to be finance people or to be public management people, have been trained to think in our particular blinkers, to think about performing our functions to the best of our abilities, and not enough about how we influence others and how we influence others in the system, whether it's our neighboring municipalities, whether it's another sphere of government, whether it's civil society, and so on. How do we influence them to be able to align themselves to the goals that we are wanting to achieve? How do we work together? And so this is something that doesn't come easily, and we need to build it in a deliberate and intentional way in our institutions. And collaborative intermediary organizations, and they exist in all of your contexts. They exist out there in all of the geographies in which you work. They can be really important allies in being able to leverage the capacity to be able to build these capabilities in your system and build the very much needed trust that's required in the system. Because trust underpins all of this, and you need capable brokers to be able to build that trust within your system. So I hope this has been useful. Thank you very much for inviting me to be able to make this input. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Click up, please.
Sure.
Another round of applause, please, for Nishendra. And it certainly has been useful, Nishendra. I like the idea of contagious collaboration, and I couldn't agree more that partnering with communities is essential in any kind of partnership and collaborative work. In my space, radio, the community is the first one to tell us whether they like or don't like something. And it doesn't matter how great an idea you have or how beautiful the design is, if the community has not bought into the plan, it will never be realized. That is just a reality. Another round of applause, please, to the CEO of the Economic Development Partnership.